a Maimer from Tafshin Mem Aleph, 1981, Shabbos Parshas Bamidbar. The Rebbe is going to discuss all the different things in this beginning of this parsha, this Chumash, all the different descriptions that it talks about when it talks about the location of where Hashem told Moshe to count the Yid. וידבר Hashem al Moshe במדבר סיני באוהל מועד gomer, and Hashem spoke to Moshe in the wilderness of Sinai, in Oil Moed, in the tent of meeting. So as Rosh called us Bnei Yisrael gomer, count the heads of the entire congregation of Bnei Yisrael. Sark love when you understand Mahim, Beza, and Yanim, the Midbar Sinai Be'ol Moed, what are the two aspects and components? It says the wilderness of Sinai and an Oil Moed. In other words, that he is talking about why in other places he says openly, why does he even have to tell us all these details? He told it in Midbar Sinai and he told it in Oil Moed. Why do we even have to know that he did it over there? Also, when you understand the order in these two aspects, first it says the wilderness of Sinai, and afterwards it says in the tent of meeting. Though this was the literal order, the way it came about. First, the Yidden arrived from their travels to the wilderness of Sinai. And afterwards, they were able to erect and have the tent of meeting. Even though this was the obvious order, this itself needs an explanation. What's the reason for this order? Because we know everything is by Hashgacha Pratis, by divine providence. And if it had to be that way, there must be a deeper concept and a deeper idea behind the scenes. What's the spiritual significance that first there's Midbar Sinai, and then there's the level of Oil Moed. Also, we need to understand, it says, count them by head. What's the idea of counting by head? The idea of counting has many types of descriptions and words that are used in Lashon Kodesh, in Hebrew, in the Holy Tongue, for the word meaning counting. Why specifically over here does he use the description of literally raising the head? He could have used the word pakoid, like Chumash of Pikudim, the Chumash of Numbers. Could have used sipur, minion. There's so many other words that he could have used. Why specifically this term? Before saying that it says it says the first day of the second month in the second year. So he says as follows. What's this date referring to? Rashi, and Rashi explains, since we're talking about the first day of the second month of the second year of their going out of Mitzrayim, which is a year later after they went out of Mitzrayim. So it comes out like this. Rashi explained, the Echad B'Nisan, Arish Chodesh Nisan, Hukam Mishkan, the Mishkan was erected. And a month later, of that second year, of a year later after them going out of Mitzrayim, Hashem counted them. So from the fact that the Rashi brings in this idea that the Mishkan was erected on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, what does that matter for the whole content that he's talking about here? All the pasuk says the first day of the second month of the second year. So Rashi should have said on Rosh Chodesh Iyar, a year after they went out of Mitzrayim, that's when they counted them. But Rashi is not happy with that. Rashi begins with saying, on the first day of Nisan, the Mishkan was erected. And then, the month later, he counted them. So that indicates that there is an association between them. The Mizem movement is understood. The Minyan Bnei Yisrael, Kasher, and Mishkan, Oil Moed, the counting of the Bnei Yisrael is connected with the Mishkan. The tent of meeting, all the pieces are moving according to this understood. The Geshem Shein Mishkan, who in Nitzchi B'Cholech and Vech Yisrael, just like the idea of the Mishkan, is something that's everlasting in every single Yid. Like it says, I shall rest and dwell amongst them. And we always know it doesn't say v'shachanti b'soichoi, I shall rest and dwell in it, meaning the Mishkan, but within them, within each and every Yid. So since Rashi associates the Mishkan being erected with the counting of the Yidden, so we must say that the counting of the Yidden is also an ongoing thing. So too, it's concerning the count of the Yidden that's related in this Torah portion. This means to say the noise was Torah in addition to the fact that the entire Torah is everlasting. It's an everlasting directive in every place and every time. In the service of a man to his creator. In addition to that which applies across the board in any event of the Torah or any teaching of the Torah, there is there's a primary lesson in every place, and every time concerning the count of Bnei Yisrael, that's in this parsha, because this must be unique, because it's connected to the Mishkan that's everlasting, so too the counting is everlasting. So especially since the counting of the Eden in this parsha is so important, even though it's not the first time that the Torah numbers the Yidden. And earlier in Chum Shmois, he enumerated the Yidden, and later on he's going to count the Yidden. But still, in this parsha, it's so important. The entire fourth chumash of the Chamish Chumshei Torah is called, we call Bamidbar, but it's also known by Chazal as the Chumash of Numbers. So if it's known as the Chumash of Numbers, that shows how vital and crucial this whole idea of counting is, and therefore it gives it even more strength and importance. From this it's understood, and from all this understood, there's a unique lesson from this counting. And also there's a unique lesson from the fact that it's connected with the wilderness of Sinai and the tent of meeting specific. And that's why at the beginning of our parsha, he right away explains, you know where this count took place? In the wilderness of Sinai and in the Mועד, because there's something important to know and a lesson to be derived from all time, not just from the count, but from the location as well. The explanation of this matter is in the parshas who number of Bnei Yisrael b'yosim b'midbar b'derech b'tzeis Mitzrayim b'dark mal eretz b'gvurachava. This parsha was told to the Jewish people while they were in the wilderness on the road going out of Mitzrayim, on the way traveling to the good and broad land towards Yisrael. Hinik, it says in the pasuk, you made says Mitzrayim, like your days in the plural of going out of Mitzrayim. It's explained in a different place. The Mashakosov, the reason why it says like your days in the plural, because all the days of the life of a person, and you made says are the days plural of you going out of the land of Mitzrayim. Our whole lifetime are days of going out of Mitzrayim. The neshama descended down here below from its very high building, meaning in Gan Eden and in the spiritual realms, to a deep pit, a deep dungeon. It descended to a place of constraints and boundaries. Mitzrayim, from the word Meitzar, constraints. By Yerida, the descent of the neshama that it came down so low is for the sake of an ascent. Lots is Mitzrayim, to go out of Eden. To reach a good and broad land, to reach this essential broadness, to reach the ultimate state of broadness, a broadness that there cannot be anything more broad. So you're going from Meitzar el Merchav, you're going from constraints to the complete opposite of constraints. And that's the entire idea of the service of a person upon the earth. You should go out of the idea of constraints and boundaries. And how does this exodus affected? How does it come about? It's through being involved in Torah study, and through doing mitzvahs, and through the service of davening. This is all encapsulated in these phrases that it says in the wilderness of Sinai, in the tent of meeting, as we will explain. The idea behind this is the what is the avodah of davening? In Yanahu Alam al Matal Maila, its idea is about ascending from below to above. Like it says that Yaakov saw in his dream, behold, the ladder is standing on the ground, and its head, the top of the ladder, reaches to the heavens. That the Farshim and Chazal, Chassidus especially, indicate that this is all a metaphor for davening. He finds himself very much below. From there, he goes up very high. More like my father-in-law explained, the Friedrich Rebbe explained, the machakos of arzo behay, when it says arzo with a hey at the end, it means lower than just land alone. In other words, it could have said sulam mutzav aretz, and that would mean the same thing. There are times when the hey at the end means instead of the word, instead of the prefix lamed, which means two, so you substitute it with the letter hey. But over here, you don't need the letter hey at all. And the Friedrich Rebbe says that this letter hey indicates that it's lower than the regular idea of earth. So in other words, when we say that the ladder of davening and the ladder is standing on the ground, it's not just any ground, it's the lowest level, as we'll soon explain. And the same thing when it says Hashemayma, it's beyond the level of ordinary level of heaven. Hashemayma with a hey at the end means the highest level. Kapashtus, not feel like the simple idea of davening. What does davening come about? Because I'm lacking something. That means I'm in a low state. I'm in a needy state. He has some type of lack and deficiency. He's davening that whatever he's lacking should be filled. Once davening is over, comes that which is drawing down from above to below. We said tefillah is ascending from below to above. After davening, we're drawing down from above to below. Because of, like the pasuk continues describing Yaakov Avinu's dream about the ladder standing on the ground and its top reaching the heavens. So it says, "V'hine malach elikim oilim v'yardim by." The malachim of Hashem are going up and descending. Meaning there are two stages. There's ascending and then descending. After the ascent, comes about the descent and the drawing down. What does that mean? Since we identify the ladder with davening, what is the going down that has to do with this? And the study in the avoid of a person, that is the idea of Torah study, is drawing down from above to below. Torah was given from above by Hashem, like we say in the brachas that we make on Torah study. We say Hashem nasan lanu es Torah. He gave us one who gave us his Torah. So that means it's something that's coming from above to us. And afterwards, once it came down from above to below in the Torah, it comes down even lower in mitzvahs. Like Chazal say, the greatness of Torah study is that it brings to action the inyan ma'isa mitzvahs. The idea of the action of the mitzvahs is even lower. How come? Mitzvahs do not just exist in the spiritual world of action, just like there's B'riya, Yitzira, which are spiritual worlds, so too there's Olam Hasiya, the way it's the spiritual world of action. And then there's our physical world, which is a physical Olam Hasiya. Not only do the mitzvahs reach down below into the physical, material world of action, it reaches down even to the coarse most materialistic, most darkened place in the world of action. Through the descent very low, which is what mitzvahs accomplish, we come to very great ascent. It's like the great advantage of light that comes out of the darkness over ordinary light, or the great advantage of wisdom that comes out of foolishness than ordinary wisdom. That's the idea of mitzvahs, tapping into a very great light because it deals with things that are very low. Inyan Zeh, kosher and matan Torah, this idea is connected with the giving of the Torah, which is also about coming down from a high place to very, very low. Let's explain the Zohar. How could it be the revelation of Matan Torah was only through first Yisro giving thanks to Hashem? Sha'amar ato yadaiti, that he said, now I know that Hashem is greater from all the gods. And that Parshas Yisro, after Yisro said that, that's when the Torah was able to be given. How come? Why did we need Yisro to thank Hashem and to recognize Hashem for the Torah to be given? He says, because only then do you have the elevation and transformation of the lowest level. So Yisro, who had served every type of idolatry, and he went ahead and admitted and recognized the greatness of Hashem, then it had the great, powerful light that comes out of darkness and the powerful wisdom that comes out of foolishness. Until the way it's explained by the Alter Rebbe in Tanya, chapter 36, that the goal and purpose is this low world. So it arose in his will, to be a pleasantness before Hashem. Once it's sublimated, and darkness is transformed to light. Yeser says, in a much more powerful way, and the additional light that comes out of darkness, that is the ultimate purpose. Like it's brought down the Zohar. The Kadiskafi Sitra Achra is Stalik Ikara the Kuchabrichu B'chulam. That when Sitra Achra becomes sublimated, then the glory of Hashem rises up in all the worlds. Before Bedrusha Lula, and it's explained in the Mamorim of the Friedrich Rebbe's Yartzeit, the Yud Shvat Mamorim. The intention in this is like Ili Atzmusi Baruch, the revelation of Hashem's very essence. That's why this Hamshach is called from the word rising up. Because such a great revelation that's incomparably higher than all the worlds in which it manifests itself. And that comes specifically from the transformation of our low world down here. So it's not just enough for us to ascend, but it's important to bring godliness in this world down here. That is the whole purpose. Now we'll understand how that is hinted in what it says, the expression in the beginning of the pasuk, identifying the location where the counting took place. This is what it says in the wilderness of Sinai, in the tent of meeting. It's referring to both of these types of avodah that we mentioned before. B'midbar Sinai, in the wilderness of Sinai, that's the idea of the ascent from below to above. How come? A wilderness, a place of snakes and scorpions and poisonous snakes and a thirst that there's no water over there. From that ultimately negative place, he wants to arise and he wants to leave the wilderness. By days of and through this desire that he wishes to go out of the wilderness, through this he goes up higher and higher. Like it says in the pasuk, who is this that arises and goes up out of the wilderness? Not just it's a location that they are leaving the wilderness, but even more so, the very ascent, the very capability of going up is because of the wilderness. Through the thirst. He arrives to the level of the wilderness that's higher than the level of Adam, meaning Adam is the level also referring to supernal man, Hashem. And it says a pasuk that indicates that Midbar is a place that's devoid of man. So the simple meaning is devoid of man in a negative. But then there's a level, such a high level that's devoid of godliness, the level of godliness that's limited and associated with the level called man. Let's see it inside. Can be verbal to the Torah. Like it's explained to the Torah parsha Bamidbar, she bechinas eretz goymer lo yashav adam sham shalamaylam bechinas adam. It's a land that no man has settled, that's beyond the level of Adam. So that is the idea of the being in the wilderness itself, and the wish to go out of the wilderness. That itself causes an ascent and causes a reaching for higher levels than if the person wouldn't have been in the wilderness in the first place. And even though we're talking here about davening, which is the ascent from below to above, he's going to give an example where we find this being in a state of wilderness bringing us to a greater state afterwards that we find in Torah study. Like we see also in Torah study, the main clarification of coming to a final resolution of what halacha is, that's through the different questions and give and take, back and forth. Chazal said, he settled me in darkness. This is talking about the Babylonian Talmud, the Babylonian Gemara. It has in it many, many questions and a lot of discussion and back and forth. Whereas there's something else called Talmud Yerushalmi, which is much shorter and it has less questions. But because it has less questions, so there wasn't so much wilderness, if you will, to cause us to reach higher. The wilderness, quote unquote, of the many questions allowed us and enabled us to reach a deeper understanding and a more correct understanding of the halacha. Just because of that, because there's so many questions, so that's why if there's a dispute between the Gemara, the Bavli Gemara, and the Yerushalmi Gemara, we rule like the Bavli. Why? Because the Bavli really manages to sift through all the different opinions and the views to come to the final resolution a lot clearer and a lot more reliable because it has so many questions. So that's the same thing over here about coming out of the wilderness, that the wilderness itself is a means through which our ascent is so much higher. Now, what does that mean in davening? We were talking about that davening is the idea of midbar. Service of a person, that's the idea of davening, where we're going from the lowest part and ascending higher. The beginning of a service, he finds himself very low. Till he begins to daven by just reciting Moidani. That we do not even say a name of Hashem in Moidani. Now he's talking about the simple level of Moidani. Later on, he's going to explain it on a deeper level. But now, simply put, Moidani is like the lowest level because it has no name of Hashem included. And that's the simple reason why we could say it before Negelbas. It's only a level of admitting and thanks. There's no great intellectual perception of Hashem in it. Afterwards, he rises up to the level of Hoydul Hashem. The Afshak Varomer Havaya, though he's already saying Yudke Vavke, which means not like Moida'ani, where Hashem's name isn't mentioned. Here he has already somewhat an appreciation with Hashem. It's still considered Hoidu, from the word thanks and admitting and just acceptance. Afterwards, throughout davening, it goes up level after level of Sukkot Zimra, Birchas Kriyashma, Krishma, verses of praise, and then the brachas prior to Krishma, and then Kriyashma. Until he comes to Shemoneh Esrei, and Shemoneh Esrei is standing like a servant standing before his master. He's standing at attention. That's why it says B'midbar Sinai, Sulam Sinai. That when it says about the ladder that we spoke about, the ladder of davening, that the ladder Yaakov Avinu saw in his dream was a ladder of davening. That's connected also with Sinai. Why? The gematria of Sulam without the vav is the same gematria like the word Sinai. Both of them are gematria of 130. So therefore, the Midbar Sinai indicates the idea of davening. So this is the one concept over here. Another concept. After B'midbar Sinai, we have the next step. We have the level of oil moed. After the avoid of davening, it's followed by Torah study. That's why it says in the tent of meeting, like Chazal say that the details of the Torah were given in the tent of meeting. Like it says, I will become known to you over there. I'll become met with you over there. The transmission of the Torah to the Eden through Moshe Rabbeinu was from the oil moed. That's where he taught them Torah. That's the primary idea of the tent of meeting as a place of Torah. Like the Ramban writes at the beginning of Parshas Truma, the Ikar Achef is the Mishkan, the main purpose of the building of the Mishkan, it's the place of the Shechina resting, which is the Aron. Like it says about the Mishkan and the Aron, and I'll become known and met to you over there. And I will speak with you from upon the covering of the Aron. That's why, before talking about anything else that they're going to make in the Mishkan, he spoke about the Aron and the covering of the Aron, because in level, that was the ultimate thing. That's the idea that Torah is about drawing down below, like we said before. Tefillah is about ascending from below to above. Torah is the malachim going down the ladder, the descent after the ascent. Hainu, meaning coming down below, but dvarim gashmim in physical matters. That's the idea of the 13 or 15 matters and items from which the Mishkan was made, the gold, the silver, etc., etc. It's different ways of calculating the numbers. That's why he says 13 or 15. This idea of bringing down from above to below until we come to the physical world, that's higher than davening. Through the ladder of davening, he reaches the heavens. As opposed to the Mishkan, and also the base of Migdash, that's also called the Mishkan. It says, behold, the heavens and heavens cannot contain you. And only this house, the Migdash, he said it as a statement, as a state of point, not a question, not as a wonder that it could contain you. So we see that the heavens that we go up to davening, that's not a place that can contain Hashem. Even the heavens of heavens cannot contain Hashem. But specifically down here in the Mishkan, in coming down the physical world, that's what you have. The greatest levels comes down. With this also understood the order that we spoke about before. First it says in the wilderness of Sinai, and then only afterwards it says in the tent of meeting. Though there's an advantage in Torah over davening, but there has to be a certain order. You can't jump right away to Torah. You're not going to say, well, Torah is greater than davening, let's go straight to Torah. No, there's a certain order. We know there has to be the blessings recited over the Torah before one studies Torah. And not just the brachas on the Torah, but the general idea of davening needs to precede Torah. You say them is even more so. There has to be the idea of davening preceding Torah study. You could feel us, Abba Ben Yom Shteit Filos Yismuchel Mitasi, like the davening that it says that Abba Ben Yom daven, that his davening should be close to his bed, meaning before he engages in Torah study, he gets up and he davens, and only then will he learn. The great advantage of Torah is only following davening. First, we have to rise up, and then we could pull down all those hamshachas that Torah has to pull down. Now we asked also, what does this have to do with Su'us Rosh Bnei Yisrael? The preface and introduction to both of these services, the level of davening, which is ascending from below to above, and the level of learning Torah, which is drawing down from above to below. Because of Su'as Rosh, that's the idea of raising the head. This means the Gami Sheyesh Lo Rosh, even someone that has a head, his head is perfect. Like it's explained in the Teres Rosh, which is a sefer of the Middle Rebbe that speaks about Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. The Inyan HaRosh Hu Kolas Chayes Kol Evarim, that the idea of a head is that includes the life and vitality of all the limbs. And he also directs and runs all the limbs through a spark and a part of the head that's found in every limb. So how does the head direct every limb? Because thanks to the nervous system, there's messages of like a spark of the brain in every single limb directing it. So despite the fact that the head and the brain is functioning perfectly, despite the perfect state of the head, there still has to be suas rosh hagabas rosh, raising the head. In other words, the literal translation of su is from the word raising, in addition to what the simple meaning is, counting. What is this idea of raising the head? This means to say, he should go out of all of his measures, and all of his boundaries. That's why it says, and he spoke in the wilderness of Sinai in the tent of meeting, raised the head. Since it was a new matter of speech that Hashem spoke. There was a new avodah, there was a renewal of the service in the wilderness of Sinai and the tent of meeting, the tefillah of Torah, in davening and learning. For this new type of approach, there needs to be prefaced by raising the head. He should go out of his measures and out of his boundaries. And how does one accomplish this? Leaving this is through bittul. Only by prefacing with the bittul, so then the davening and the learning is the way it's supposed to be. That's what it says in the wilderness of Sinai. It says that Hashem's Fasai Tiftach B'Yagdil Sechad has to be Nafshi Kapal Kaltiyah. My soul should be like dust before all. But like Istama, for not like regular dust, Al Kafra Midbar, but like dust of the wilderness, of a desert. Shakol Darsim Allah, everyone steps on it. Like you can have earth in a field. You're careful, especially during planting season, not to step over there. But in a desert, everybody steps over there. Sinai, not just the midbar shows on bittul, but the level of Sinai shows on bittul, because we know the Machik and Kol Torah, that Sinai is the lowest of all the mountains. But that also shows on the level of bittul. Just like we said, that before you daven, before you learn, you have to have bittul. That's why we actually find that before davening, there has to be a preparation for davening. The person before he davens has to turn away from his other thing, and he has to wash his hands. There also has to be the donning of talis and tefillin before davening. All of these preparations without just jumping into davening. Oh, I'm davening now. All of these things, the cholzah maybe they bitl, all brings to bitl. Gamas cholzat fila gufi v'amiras moidani. Also, the beginning of davening itself is by reciting moidani shuinin abitl v'ayda betachlis. It's the ultimate state of bitl. So now he's speaking the positive and the great advantage of moidani. Beforehand, he said moidani shows that we're starting from the lowest and going up high. Now he's going to say that Moida Ani shows on the ultimate bittul that needs to be a preparation for davening. Because it's such a great bittul, we do not say any of Hashem's names in it. Because it reaches, the Moida Ani reaches a level that is beyond any type of name of Hashem, a level that cannot be grasped even by any name, cannot be described by anything. This connection with that aspect of Hashem that's totally beyond any type of name, this is applicable to every single Yid. Like explained in Torah about the Rebbe, Hashem's very essence is in a state of revelation. Therefore, even babies, young children know that there is an existence of Hashem. They might not understand it, they might not have learned Chassidus and so on, but they know to say Baruch Hashem and so on, because they know of Hashem's existence. That means that the Chassidus explains that Hashem's very essence is here, that level is beyond any type of name. The aspect of Hashem, which is a luminary, which is beyond any types of lights and revelations and names, these are all extensions of Hashem, but rather Hashem's very essence manifests here. And that's why even a person that doesn't know anything still knows to say Baruch Hashem. In a similar vein, before Torah study, one needs to preface it with bit. Has to be my soul, like earth is before all, because it says before we're saying open my heart in your Torah, that's when we have to have the bit through prefacing the bit like philosophy and Shechas Pulas. So then the davening that he had before the Torah learning continues and does what it has to do. By having the bit before davening, so that ensures that the davening does what it has to accomplish. So too in the person's Torah study, that when he has his bittul prefacing his Torah study, then it's my heart is open to your Torah. Okay, like it's also understood with the human intellect that how necessary it is for understanding Torah to have bittul, because even in understanding a regular idea, you need to have bittul. If he has a desire to truly master an idea, he really wants to understand the concept. He has to totally put himself aside. He has to totally nullify himself. They should not have any type of bribery and ulterior motives, or else he'll be his results of his intellectual endeavor will be skewed. If he wants the truth, he needs to put his own interests aside. The Oz maybe then he understands the idea. But especially when we're dealing about the seichel of Torah, al Torah completely pure, without any type of other motives mixed into it. As opposed to if he doesn't nullify himself. The pasuk says that bribery, even self-bribery, will blind the eyes of the sages. From all the above, we understood the everlasting directive that's in these psukim, like we said at the beginning of the Maimer, that there must be something over here that's even more for all time than just the general idea that Torah is for all time. Especially in Shabbos Parts of Midbar, that you always read it before Matan Torah. Sometimes there'll be another parsha in between, but always when you read Parshas Bamidbar before Shavuot. The noise was that Torah in its Bechlal. In addition to the fact that Torah in general is everlasting, like we mentioned at the beginning of the Maimer, meaning is that Torah, when we read this idea in the Torah, these days are remembered and performed. That they have to, there has to be a special inspiration in these matters. And when we inspire ourselves in these matters, so then the whole situation of Matan Torah is becoming again and happening again. Zoya Shachsel Matan Torah, that's the connection between Parshas Bamidbar and the giving of the Torah. The Fishin Matan Torah, why the Agdamas Habitl Anal, because the idea of Matan Torah is through the prefacing of the above mentioned bit. Especially since this is Shabbos Mevorchim, the first of the month of Sivan. That was that year, Parshas Bamidbar. This year it's the second day of Sivan. But when the Rebbe said this Maimer of Shabbos Mevorchim, Yarchet Lisoid, the month of Sivan is the third month. Shabai Nitna Uriyat Lisoid, that in the third month was given the tripled Torah, which means the Torah that's made up of Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim, La'amet Lisoy, to tripled nation, meaning the Jewish people that are made up of Koyanim, Nevi'im, Israelim, the Inyan Resh Chodesh Sivan, who Gamkin Inyan Abitl, the idea of the first day of Sivan is also manifests and expresses the idea of Bitl, as it says in the third month. This day, Midbar Sinai, they came to the wilderness of Sinai, and the Jewish people encamped over there, facing the mountain. Since it said Vayichan, not Vayachanu, he encamped, not they encamped. So the Chazal derived from that that they encamped over there like one man with one heart. That means all differentiations ceased. All Yidden were like one man with one heart. That shows on the idea of bittul, that everything that made them separate one from another ceased to be. My ego was totally out of the way. So therefore, it's connected with everything we spoke about before, how the bittul has to precede the Torah study and the mitzvahs and so on. Right. Now that I've concluded with the bracha, by the avodah now through the above mentioned service, we come speedily mamish to the perfection of Torah and davening. It's going to be when Mashiach comes. Where do we see that it's going to be perfect when Mashiach comes? The loss of love, it is gal teras from Mashiach. When Mashiach comes, will come reveal the Torah of Mashiach. The Agam Shamar Azal, Dod Chazal say, Torah Solam Haza Hevel Hil Gavat Teras from Mashiach. That the Torah of this world, the Torah that we have now, is considered like air, like vanities in comparison to the Torah that we will study when Mashiach comes. On the other hand, Mikol Makom still know how to do it's known Matan Torah lo yeh oid pam, that Matan Torah will never repeat itself. It was a one-time event that took place in 3,300 plus years ago. Bakol nitim Matan Torah, and everything was given Matan Torah. The Mizem Muvan Shemizmam Matan Torah Ata Boim Utras Mashiach. From the time of Matan Torah, now we come to the Mashiach's Torah. In other words, to have this great perfection of Torah, it's going to be with Mashiach. And not only in Mashiach's times will there be a perfection in Torah, also the davening will be in the most perfect way. Like it says, over there we will perform before you like the mitzvahs of your will. Similar to this, there's to be found also even now in the time of the Golos. The perfection of Torah and perfection of davening. Out of joy and gladness of heart and out of comfort. By days there, when we have comfort and joy, the tefillah is like the tefillah of a rich person that davens with comfort, not like a poor person that he's all constrained and crying and so on. Shamar Azal Medrash, Chazal said in Medrash, the tefillah Ashri, the tefillah of a rich person is called the tefillah of Moshe Rabbeinu. Sha'yadim Shachim Ma'inyan Midbar Sinai Ba'al Ma'ed. Through Moshe Rabbeinu came down the matters of the wilderness of Sinai in the tent of meeting. Moshe Kosvay Dabra Hashem al Moshe Dafka Midbar Sinai. It says Hashem spoke to Moshe in the wilderness of Sinai and the Oil Ma'ed, which means Moshe is the vehicle and the channel through which Midbar Sinai comes about and Oil Ma'ed comes about. And not only do we have the quality and advantage of a tefillah of a rich person, but each one has its own advantage. A tefillah of a poor person, which is a tefillah of David HaMelech, has its own advantage. There's also the advantage of a tefillah of a poor person. Like it's known what the Baal Shem Tov says and teaches on the pasuk, tefillah of a poor person when he wraps himself up in davening before Hashem. He pours out his words. But the Baal Shem Tov explains that a poor person's davening is he doesn't want any chambers and palaces, he doesn't want any treasures. His whole will is to pour out his words before Hashem. This means to say, what is this person called an ani? Why is he called poor? What is he lacking? That's all that's bothering him. That's all that he's lacking, that he wants to be before Hashem. Concerning the mitzvah of davening, its idea is to daven for Hashem to fill our lack. So he feels that what he's lacking is being before Hashem. So he has to daven for that also. That not just his physical need, he has to daven for the fact that spiritually he feels like he's lacking. But Gabi Hashem, and the truth is, in comparison to Hashem, especially in Hashem's presence, even the greatest rich one spiritually is still considered poor. So therefore, even someone that's on the level of tefillas asher, the tefillah of a rich person, he could still be davening like a tefillah of a poor person, one that's lacking and feeling that he's missing Hashem's full revelation. Through the davening being the way it's supposed to be, so then his davening is heard by Hashem. And then his Torah is blessed. Will be the revelation of the Torah Mashiach. Like the expression of the Rambam, the conclusion of the 14-volume set of Mishnah Torah, that the creations will comprehend the mind of their Creator. Then will be the revelation of Mashiach, that Mashiach is the highest, most level, the level of Yechidah, of Klal Yisrael. And we know Yechidah is L'Yachtach. The idea of Yechidah is to become one and joined with you. And it's also Shema'achdas Klal Yisrael. It also joins all the Eden together. And through that will be fulfilled the promise to K'moshani Nichtav Kachani Nikra, that when Mashiach comes, the way I'm written, Yud Kei Vav Kei, that's how I will be pronounced. Not now that we pronounce it Aleph Dal Nun Yud. Hainu she is Batlu Hamachitzas Va'avdelos Va'chlukim Bebechinas Nichtav U'Pinas Nikra. It will cease all the divisions and all the separations and the differences between the way something is written in the Torah, the way it's pronounced, that shows on different levels. So all the different levels will be joined and coalesced together. Then Hashem will be a king over the land. And that day, his name, he will be one. His name will be one, because there'll be the joining of all these different levels. The Bias Mashiach Tzedkeinu, and the coming of Mashiach Tzedkeinu, B'Gula Mitzvah Shlema, and the Trunkum of redemption, will remain mamish speedily in our days, man.
Amen.